It was raining, the kind of rain that didn't ask permission, heavy and relentless, soaking the empty road where Daniel Harris drove home after another exhausting shift at the warehouse, his knuckles stiff from lifting boxes and his mind heavier than his body, because being a single dad meant the work never really ended, it only changed locations. His phone buzzed with a reminder, pick up Lily's inhaler tomorrow, and just as he glanced back at the road, he saw a car pulled off to the side, hazard lights blinking like a quiet cry for help in the darkness. He almost kept driving. Almost. Bills were late, dinner was probably burnt, and Lily would already be asleep clutching the old stuffed rabbit he'd sewn twice already. But then he saw the silhouette of a woman standing outside the car, one hand shielding a small child under her coat, and something inside him, something worn but unbroken, forced his foot to slow. Daniel pulled over, rain soaking through his jacket as he approached, discovering the woman trembling not just from the cold but from fear, her phone dead, her tire shredded, and no one stopping for miles. Her name was Emma. The little girl pressed into her side was named Sophie, wide-eyed and silent. Daniel didn't hesitate. He changed the tire in the rain, hands numb, jacket ruined, but when the spare collapsed too, he did the only thing he could, he offered them a ride. Emma hesitated, scanning his old truck, the child's seat in the back, the faint smell of crayons and coffee, the tired kindness in his eyes. She nodded. During the drive, Sophie said nothing, only watched Daniel through the rearview mirror, while Emma apologized again and again, embarrassed, unaware that Daniel understood helplessness better than most. When they reached the only open diner in town, Daniel insisted they warm up. Over cheap coffee and fries, Sophie finally leaned forward and whispered something that made Daniel's chest tighten and the world pause for half a second. She whispered, "Mommy, he feels safe. Like Daddy did." Daniel froze. Emma's hands shook. She hadn't known Sophie remembered her late father's voice. She hadn't known a stranger could bring it back. Daniel smiled gently, hiding the ache in his chest, because Lily used to say similar things before her mother left and never came back. That night, Daniel thought it was just kindness. Just rain. Just a favor. He had no idea it was the beginning of everything changing. And if this story is already touching your heart, pause right now and subscribe, because what happens next will stay with you long after the video ends. Days passed, then weeks, and Daniel assumed he'd never see Emma and Sophie again, because life had taught him that good moments rarely stayed, but fate had other plans. Emma showed up at Lily's school fundraiser one afternoon, shocked to see Daniel standing behind a folding table selling homemade cookies with Lily proudly announcing, "My dad baked them himself." Sophie's face lit up like she'd found something she thought she'd lost forever, and without hesitation, she ran to Daniel, hugging him tight before Emma could even react. Embarrassed apologies followed, but Daniel only knelt and smiled, because in that hug he felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years, needed. Over time, conversations turned into coffee, coffee into shared struggles, and shared struggles into quiet understanding. Emma wasn't just a stranded mom, she was rebuilding after loss, after betrayal, after learning how to be strong when she didn't feel strong at all. Daniel wasn't just a single dad, he was a man who had poured every broken dream into raising his daughter right. Sophie began spending afternoons with Lily, whispering secrets, laughing freely, and one evening, while Daniel fixed a broken fence, Sophie stood beside him and whispered again, soft but certain, "I think you were sent to us." Daniel swallowed hard. He didn't believe in miracles anymore. But he believed in showing up. The turning point came when Lily was hospitalized after an asthma attack, and Daniel broke down in the hallway, alone and terrified, until Emma appeared, holding his shaking hands, staying all night, whispering strength into him the way Sophie once had. In that moment, Daniel realized helping a stranger had quietly rewritten his life. Months later, on a calm evening under a sky no longer raining, Sophie stood between them, holding both their hands, and whispered the words that sealed everything, "We're a family now, right?" Daniel looked at Emma, tears in both their eyes, and nodded, because some families aren't born, they're found. And if this story moved you, reminded you of kindness, love, or second chances, subscribe to this channel right now, because every story here is proof that one small decision can change everything. Time didn't rush them, because the best things never do, they unfold quietly in the spaces between ordinary days, and Daniel learned that love didn't arrive like thunder anymore, it came like steady ground beneath his feet. Weeks after Lily left the hospital, the house felt different, warmer somehow, filled with laughter that didn't echo with loneliness anymore. Emma started coming by in the evenings, sometimes with groceries she insisted on contributing, sometimes with nothing but stories from her day, and Sophie followed Daniel everywhere like a shadow, handing him tools, asking questions, watching how his patience never ran out even when the fence didn't cooperate or the sink leaked again. Lily noticed it too, the way her dad smiled more without realizing it, the way he stopped staring into space after she fell asleep, and one night she asked him the question he'd been avoiding in his own heart, "Dad, are Emma and Sophie staying?" Daniel didn't answer right away, because he had promised himself he would never drag his daughter through another goodbye, never let hope become something fragile again, but Lily's eyes were steady, stronger than he remembered them being, and she added softly, "I wouldn't mind." That night, Daniel sat alone on the porch long after the house went quiet, thinking about the rain-soaked road, the broken tire, the whisper that started it all, and he realized something terrifying and beautiful at the same time. Helping them hadn't cost him anything, but losing them now would cost him everything. The moment of truth came unexpectedly, when Sophie's school called saying she had a panic attack during a storm drill, and Emma froze, shaking, because storm still reminded Sophie of the night her father never came home. Daniel didn't hesitate. He drove like nothing else mattered, held Sophie as she cried, whispered calm into her the same way he had Lily so many times before, and Sophie clung to him, whispering through tears, "Please don't go." Emma watched it all, tears streaming, realizing this man wasn't just kind, he was constant. That evening, when the girls were asleep, Emma finally said the words she'd been holding back, admitting she was scared, scared of needing someone again, scared of trusting happiness, scared of letting her daughter love a man who hadn't promised forever. Daniel took her hands, steady and sure, and told her he couldn't promise perfection, couldn't promise life wouldn't hurt again, but he could promise to stay, to show up every single day, to choose them even when it was hard. That was when Sophie appeared in the doorway, half asleep, clutching her blanket, and whispered the words that broke every wall Daniel had left standing, "You already chose us." In that moment, the choice was no longer heavy, it was clear. Months later, on a quiet afternoon filled with sunlight instead of rain, Daniel stood in the backyard with Lily and Sophie between him and Emma, realizing that family wasn't about replacing what was lost, but honoring it by building something new. And if this chapter made you believe in second chances, quiet courage, and the power of one small act of kindness, subscribe to this channel now, because the stories here aren't just fiction, they're reminders that love often begins with a simple decision to stop and help. The life they built didn't announce itself with grand gestures or dramatic promises, it settled in gently, the way sunlight fills a room without asking, and Daniel often caught himself standing in the doorway watching Emma braid Lily's hair while Sophie sat cross-legged on the floor offering serious opinions, realizing that peace had a sound and it was laughter mixed with ordinary chaos. Mornings became shared routines instead of silent races against the clock, lunches packed side by side, forgotten shoes found just in time, and evenings ended not with exhaustion but with gratitude, because no one was carrying the weight alone anymore. Daniel still worked long hours, his hands still rough, his back still tired, but coming home no longer felt like survival, it felt like arrival. Emma slowly let go of the guilt she carried, the belief that moving forward meant leaving her late husband behind, until one night she admitted to Daniel that loving again felt like betrayal, and Daniel, with quiet understanding, told her that love didn't erase the past, it honored it by refusing to let pain have the final word. The true test came when Lily's school hosted a family day, and Emma hesitated, unsure where she belonged, until Lily took her hand in front of everyone and said, "She's my family," with the kind of certainty only children have, and Sophie nodded beside her like it had always been that way. Daniel watched Emma's eyes fill with tears, realizing that the thing she feared most had already happened. She and her daughter were no longer alone. Later that night, as a storm rolled in, rain tapping softly against the windows, Sophie climbed into Daniel's lap and whispered the same words that started it all, only this time they carried peace instead of uncertainty. "You feel like home." Daniel held her close, his throat tight. Understanding that some promises don't need to be spoken because they're lived every day. Under the dim porch light, with the girls asleep inside and the rain finally gentle, Daniel asked Emma if she would stay, not forever, not in fear, but in choice, and Emma said yes, not because she needed saving, but because she wanted this life, this family, this love that didn't rush or demand but simply remained. And as the screen fades on this story, remember this: sometimes the most powerful love stories begin when someone stops for a stranger, listens to a child's whisper, and decides to stay. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel now, because every story here is proof that kindness can turn into home, and love, when it's real, never needs to leave.